have root vegetables because that's all that grows there. And I just went, a lot of sheep, whatever. And I thought, I wouldn't mind being on a
Your hair looks good. Let me help you.
We're going to do it that way.
Your hair looks so much longer.
So how long are you down here? I had the pleasure of driving. You had the pleasure of driving around.
Oh, yeah.
That's a good friend. That's who's going to do that. Thanks, man. I hate to do it. I had one very large estate. No properties owned. Oh, everything.
Whoops, I gave mine away. Boker Tov.
How was your summer so far, Jamie?
What was that?
How was your summer so far?
Okay, I've been here, basically.
So have I.
So, that bagel looks perfect.
Huh?
You toasted that perfectly. Good morning, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom for those watching, wherever you're watching from.
9 o'clock.
9:02. 9:02. Well, look at some nice friends here.
Ignore my message.
Neil, why would you sit in the back when there's all this room up front? Or next to Alex? Okay. Good morning and welcome. Hope everybody, Shabbat Shalom.
Interesting, but I can't remember.
Okay. Happy Independence Day weekend and a Shabbat Shalom. Nice to see everybody here. So we Jews are still learning. Not everybody has left town, and those who have left town are watching online. So that's awesome. We are, well, let's get ready to bless this Shabbat. V'shamru, v'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam berit olam. V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam berit olam. Beini uvein bnei Yisrael oti leolam, oti leolam. V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam berit olam. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et ha-shamayim ve'et ha'aretz. V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam berit olam. Uvayom hashvi'i shavat vayinafash, shavat vayinafash, shavat vayinafash. V'shamru V'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat לדורותם ברית עולם. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pori hagafen. Amen l'chaim. Oh, that grape juice is awesome. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Amen. My drinking my water had nothing to do with Torah being Mayim Chaim, living waters. Just did at the same time. Okay. Welcome, everybody. We are studying this morning Parshat Chukat. Chukat, or a chok. Chukat is in the, what's that word, Nancy, when you connect, or Francine, when you connect one word to another word? No. Yeah, thank you. Conjunction to the word next to it. But a chok is a law, the kind of law in the Torah for which we really never know what it means. But if you say for 10:30, I'll give an idea for what the chok, and the chok specifically in this Torah portion in the beginning is the chok of the red heifer, the rituals that are used with that red, unblemished cow. We're not talking about him today. We're talking about him later at 10:30. But this morning, we're going to talk about the second section in the triennial for Chukat, which is in Bamidbar, Book of Numbers, beginning in chapter 20. And that's going to be the section of Moses and the sin. And usually, so Rabbi Barish's style is to, and this is what, so I think Rabbi Gurines and I also somewhat follow that for Torah study. When you get to the end, you have some sort of conclusion or answer. Today, I'm going to give you the answer at the beginning, if you look on the sheet, but still, and we're going to figure out what, was that an answer? So, see what we have said against what has already been said about it, and let the truth have its way. That's what Maimonides says about the portion we're going to study. Does it sound like it's an answer to anything? Yeah, probably not. But that's the fun we're going to have this morning in our Torah study, trying to figure out, is there an answer? What's so connected to this portion in our everyday life, when I work with people who are converting to choosing Judaism, many of them, especially former Catholics, they want to know an answer. What does Judaism say about X? Like, what does it say? What's the chok? What's the law? What's the rule? And so many times there's not an answer, and that leaves people sort of in this liminal what to do space. But that's what we're dealing with this morning. So it is, this section of Chukat. Chukat has a lot of different stories. It's the red heifer. It is the striking of the rock, which is what we're going to talk about. It is the wars of the kings. It is the snakes and the copper snake that heals the bite of the regular snakes. It's a lot. We're only going to deal with this section in chapter 20. So what I would like to do is, I've even written my instructions down here for me. Excellent. We're going to read verses 20, 1 through 5. And then our first little section will focus on verse 2. And this first part is the background. The first woman's commentary will be the background to what we're really talking about. So who reads first? Norman. Bavakasha. Norman, use the microphone right in front of you.
The Israelites arrived in a body at the wilderness of Zin on the first new moon, and the people stayed at Kadesh. Miriam died there and was buried there. The community was without water, and they joined against Moses and Aaron. The people quarreled with Moses, saying, "If only we had perished when our brothers perished at the instance of the Eternal. Why have you brought the Eternal congregation into this wilderness for us and our beasts to die there? Why did you make us leave Egypt to bring us to this wretched place, a place with no grain or figs or vines or pomegranates? There's not even water to drink."
Okay, excellent job. So, Norman, I forgot your friend's name. Victor? Victor. Victor, welcome again. And Victor's going to read not from the Torah, but we're going to stop and look at the first commentary on page 1.
The woman's commentary. Without water, is the timing of the present complaint for water significant? Miriam is closely associated with water. She observes the deliverance of Moses from drowning in the Nile, Exodus 2:1-9, and she celebrates with him at the sea. Right before she dies, new ritual instructions require water for lustration that is made from living water. And now, immediately after Miriam's death, the people desperately cry for water because the two episodes follow each other sequentially. The rabbis explicitly connect Miriam's death to the lack of water. The linkage suggests to the midrashic imagination that she was the source of the water now gone.
Okay, so that's our understanding. Miriam dies, and she was so connected with water that the rabbi said, you know, that well that followed them must be connected to Miriam. And now she's not there, and now the people are going to be crying for water. But if you notice in their complaints, it's not only water that they are crying about. They are upset about their whole situation. And who are they talking about? Their brothers who died? Well, it could be those who died at the plague of Korah, or it could be now, because we're at the very end, the whole generation who left Egypt have now died out, and this is the new generation, and they have really taken up those complaints. So that's the water, but it's not the only connection to water. And there's been, what else, how have we ritualized in our practice today Miriam and the water? What is a ritual that has been created in the last, 40 years or so? Yeah, Eric? The mikvah? No, mikvah's old. That's not from Miriam. What has come from Miriam? That's an also excellent idea, but that's not it either. What has become from Miriam? Correct. We have ritualized this idea of Miriam being connected to water with the addition to Miriam's cup on the at the Seder. Who has a Miriam's cup at their Seder? 1, 2, less than half of you. So this is that idea. So at the Seder, right, because Miriam brought the water in the well that followed them through the wilderness, they came out of Egypt and they had that water. So that's the connection. But now, oh my goodness, we have no water. Let's read the Rabbeinu Bachya, the second part on the sheet, and let's see what he's saying.
The congregation had no water. As soon as Miriam died, the well which had traveled with the Israelites all these years ceased providing water. The water which the people had enjoyed all these years was due to the merit of Miriam, who had stood by watching what would happen to her infant brother when he was in a basket in the reeds at the edge of the river in Exodus. God had rewarded her for that act of kindness by making her the provider of water for Moses' people. The people had not appreciated this until the well ceased with Miriam's death.
Okay, so Bachya says something else, which goes to almost the very end of our portion. They didn't appreciate this. So I didn't put it in here, but towards the end of the portion, there's another Az Yashir. There's another song of praise about water. We know the first one, it's at the Song of the Sea. It's a big section. It's Miriam says, it's what we sing with our tambourines. Miriam and the women dance. That's the first song. And there's another song about water. It comes at the end of this portion or close to the end. And finally, what Bach is saying, finally they appreciated and they realized and they sung to Miriam. But so far, no water, and they are complaining. So let's see. Questions, comments about this part of how the rabbis decided this connection of water and Miriam? It is interesting that Miriam is considered a prophetess, and this is her merit. We don't have too many places in the Torah where a woman is merited for something like this, so that's something to acknowledge. We are continuing now on verses. We're going to read verse 6. Only verse, let me see, verse 6.
What is lustration, water for lustration?
Oh, okay, thank you. So the water of lustration was the first part of the Torah portion with the red heifer. So what was happening is you burnt the whole perfect cow. Now, Miller, how many years ago did we watch that show that talked about the red heifer? 12? Look how you remember. He's guessing. Such a liar. Okay, so there was this crazy show which Miller had found called Dig, I think, right? There's another show called Dig, and it was all about this crazy cult that created another red heifer and was going to bring that back to the temple. But what it is, the red heifer, perfect animal, is burnt up completely for atonement. Its ashes are mixed with water, and you could read that in the beginning of the portion, and that is used to purify people who have come in contact with death. So if you come in contact with the water, that water is going to purify you, and then of course, since you've been in contact with the water, you're also impure, so there's an purity going on. So that's the water of lustration. Yes? Right. There's nothing much more said about Miriam. In this portion, Aaron's going to also die, and Moses is going to find out that he's going to die, and there's a lot of mourning going on. There's nothing said, but the rabbis lifted up really her death by saying there's no more water. That's how important she was when she was alive, that when she's gone, dry. Yeah, it doesn't say that. I have to look it up, see what the Midrash says about where she's buried. Must have been buried somewhere there. Kadesh. Okay. Any verse 6. Okay. One little verse.
Moses and Aaron came away from the congregation to the entrance of the tent of meeting and fell on their faces. The presence of Adonai appeared to them.
Okay, so here's everybody there complaining. You should have let us die with blah, 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 blah. And then Moses and Aaron left, and I've highlighted, I've made bold the text in Hebrew and in English. Vayavo Moshe v'Aharon mipnei, from, came away from. But we're going to understand that mipnei is going to have a couple of slightly nuanced understanding, which will give us a better context of how Moses and Aaron were feeling. And also, they came away, fell on their faces, right? They went prostrate before God, and what's going to happen. Let's pass and read the Ibn Ezra.
And Moses and Aaron went from the presence of the assembly like those who flee. Continue?
Yeah, you can read the next one, thanks.
Ibn Ezra comments that Moses and Aaron came before the assembly as fugitives instead of sanctifying the name of God and showing initiative. There was no greater desecration of God's name than this.
All right. Ed, I'm going to pass the microphone to you. So they came away from, they left the people. There's two different understandings. They came away from the people. They fled as fugitives before God, or Or what did Ibn Ezra say? They went away. They went from the assembly as fugitives. They're running away. They're running away as fugitives. Meaning, when you're a fugitive, how do you feel? Do you feel safe? No. So they're running away. Ed, what did you want to say?
Okay. Well, I was going to honor my father a little bit.
Okay.
One of his favorite points in Torah was noticing how often Moses and, in this passage, Aaron fell on their faces. And I think that ties in with the use of mipnei instead of lifnei.
Okay.
And Ibn Ezra's comment. Moses is showing.
They can't hear you.
But yeah. All right. At this point, Moses, frankly, is burnt out. He is no longer capable of or has an incentive to act as leader. He's just given up on the people.
And giving up on the people, Ibn Ezra and the Hamalibut is saying, is the greatest way to desecrate God's name. Giving up is giving up. And here Ibn Ezra says, Hamalibut says in the name of Ibn Ezra, that not showing initiative desecrated God's name. So the idea, what we're talking about this morning, is what did Moses and Aaron do? What was their sin? That's our goal. What was their sin? Maimonides, we saw at the beginning, lets us, hang out in this understanding of what is their sin. And now we're getting a first hint that they ran mipnei, from the people to God. They didn't run lifnei, before the people. They were before the people. They didn't run before God, like standing before God. They went away from the people as fugitives. So they were frightened, maybe Ed says. They were burnt out. They were giving up. They fell on their faces. So falling on their faces is not just lying prostrate before God and praying or seeking out God. But when we say fell on their faces, it's like nothing else to do. So that's something to think about, Moses and Aaron. Yes, Eileen and then Nancy.
So if they were afraid, then what they gave up was their trust in God.
Okay, there's an idea. An idea they didn't trust in God. We're going to talk about that.
I think that they were overwhelmed and did not know how to handle their grief. And this was just one last incident that made them frail, made them people instead of the leaders, instead of the high priest and the messenger of God. They were two men that were in deep grief, and they just couldn't bear the burden of the people anymore.
Okay, so we know, thank you, Moses and Aaron were grieving their sister. We just said that she has just died.
I think our humanity always sometimes comes first. So what people were saying was very harsh. Think of yourself as Moses and Aaron. That's a really harsh comment on what they're saying. So the first thing comes to mind is a defense mechanism, is something of reflection of yourself on a deeper level. And it takes a moment or two to reflect back and say, wait a minute, I am what God is telling me this. I'm standing in what God is saying. And then come to that realization to calm down and then go back to God to say, help me here.
Okay, so Carol's saying maybe if Moses and Aaron took a couple of deep breaths, and maybe if they separated themselves for a few minutes and sort of gathered themselves, then they could have gone to God and said, hey, what should we do? Rather than this kind of running away as fugitives. According to Ibn Ezra, not everybody says that. Erica.
Thank you. This concept of falling in their face reminds me to the opposite scenario that we learned a few weeks ago about the census and the lifting your head. So when they were doing the census, they were talking that it was lifting your head as if you are present and you can be counted towards a bigger goal. This is falling in your face, sounds the opposite, sounds you cannot count on me because I'm putting my head down. So I think that there is this disappointment in God that they cannot be counted, and this concept of following the truth, I think that there's a connection with this concept of the hog, that sometimes you don't understand why things are the way that they are, but you just need to have faith and sort of go through it and go with it, and eventually the truth will come up. So I think that there is something to do with it.
Okay, thank you.
I think this illustrates another important part of Judaism, in that Judaism does not have a monastic tradition. We don't go off in the mountain and pray and remove ourselves from society. Regardless of how messy or ugly it is, we engage society. And I think that's what they're emphasizing here.
Okay, thank you. So we do have there is a place, not monastic, but there is a place in Judaism, especially among the Kabbalists, of some reflection and, let's say, mountains and Tzfat of separating themselves, not really as a monastic order, but to separate and to reflect. And, because there's always an and, we don't say but, and there is the principle of do not separate yourself from the community. And so that's a super strong principle. And so, yeah, separating, did they separate themselves? They're going to go back, but maybe when people were yelling at them, running away as fugitives, as the B'nai Ezra says, even going to the tent of meeting, even doing that was a way that people said, oh, they too are feeling like we're feeling, maybe.
So I think it may have something to do with Moses not recognizing the impact of his sister's death.
Okay, like Carol said, they don't not even realizing the grief that they're feeling.
Yeah, that, she's the one, Sherry and I were just saying, she's the one that basically saved him,
right,
and made him part of who he is, and then she passes away, but the Torah just doesn't even commemorate it. And then I guess Moses is expected to go on as if nothing happened, but he can't, because in reality, all of us need to take time and grieve and put things in order before we can go on. And it's not good to pretend that it's just a routine thing, because even though he was the leader, he was still a man. He was still a person.
Okay.
And a husband and a father and a sister.
Thank you. So if we went back and read the beginning of the portion and talking about the way you purify yourself following being in contact with a corpse, which is what the first section talks about with the red heifer, there's this idea that there are steps to take. There are steps to take with grief. And we don't see any of the steps that Moses and Aaron are taking at this point. We don't see it in the Torah. So many of us are thinking that had to influence their next step, their next move. That may have influenced them, and it sort of makes sense. Okay, let's go on to the next verses. We're going to read verses 7 through 13. 7 through 13. Dan, are you reading? Do you see where we are? In the Plout, we are on page 1152. Lost my glasses. Okay.
And the Eternal One spoke to Moses, saying, you and your brother Aaron take the rod and assemble the community, and before their very eyes, under the rock to yield its water. Order the rock to yield its water. Thus you shall produce water for them from the rock, and provide drink for the congregation and their beasts. Moses took the rod from before the Eternal, as he had been commanded. Moses and Aaron assembled the congregation in front of the rock, and he said to them, listen, you rebels, shall we get water for you out of this rock? And Moses raised his hand and struck the rock twice with his rod. Out came copious water, and the community and their beasts drank. But the Eternal One said to Moses and Aaron, because you did not trust me enough to affirm my sanctity in the sight of the Israelite people, therefore you shall not lead this congregation into the land that I have given them. Those are the waters of Meribah, meaning that the Israelites quarreled with the Eternal, whose sanctity was affirmed through them.
Okay, excellent. There's the whole thing. That's it. Those 13 verses, Moses is no longer entering the land of Israel, and neither is Aaron. So the truth that Maimonides is talking about, what we're going to look for, in the first comment I put in the top of the page, is going to be the truth of answering. We see that God says, you did not trust me enough to affirm my sanctity, but we don't exactly know what that meant. That's what we're going to find out. There's some kind of sin involved with you did not trust me enough, but the rabbis have asked, what did he do? What did he do? What was so bad? What was so bad? And we're going to try with the next couple of sections from our tradition and discussion to figure out what that is. Yes, Joe, where's the microphone? Here it is. I'll bring it back this one. Oh, we have two.
Could the water be a metaphor for something else, like faith?
Could be. There's a lot of water is living waters. The Torah is water. A lot of things are water. You needed the water to purify. You need. There is certainly what I said last night. They weren't trusting in the process. They weren't trusting in God. So this whole thing could be an illustration of what it meant to go through these trials and give up.
Earlier, when Pharaoh decreed that the firstborn be killed and the Jews should not have any children, it was the women who kind of kept the whole operation going, so to speak, and Miriam could have been reflective of that faith.
Well, there are, thank you, there are midrashim about Miriam, and when Pharaoh said all the babies will be killed, the midrash says that all the Israelites divorced because they decided they weren't going to have any more children. So they all divorced. And Miriam was the child that convinced her parents to get married again and have more children. Another midrash is that the women then went out into the fields, made themselves beautiful, and re-seduced their husbands to come back together with them to have more children. So both of those. There's another midrash, I don't know if I put it in here, maybe we'll get to it, about the water, about, I don't remember, we'll see. Pharaoh's sorcerers or fortune tellers said that Moses is going to meet his end through water. Pharaoh condemned all baby boys to be thrown into the water, but Miriam saved him. He wasn't condemned to water then. Is this the time he was going to be condemned from water? That's one of the questions. Genius. Next.
I thought about this piece a long time because it just seems on the surface that it's such a trivial action for God to be so punishment. But I think that when you read it with a different eye, I'm thinking it showed that Moses was really disconnected at that point, both from his community that he was leading and from God, because the community was grieving a major loss in their midst. And you don't know what you had until you lose it. And Miriam was a really significant figure amongst them. And she dying, they were grieving and reacting to not having her anymore. And of course, it took the form of fetching and complaining, but Moses did not understand what their people were going through at that point, and he just saw it as an affront to all the effort that he's put into taking care of them, as opposed to looking at what they were, where they were coming from with all this. And then in terms of his connection with God, even though when you read it, God does not say to him specifically, and tell them that I said so, or, he just said, do this. It didn't specifically, but at this point, he's had a relationship with God for a long time.
And remember, last time they needed water, God told him to take your rod and touch the rock for water. That was the first time.
But he should have understood at this point,
Moses,
Moses, that really he is an emissary from God, and he's not God himself to produce these miracles. And he failed at that. And so it shows that he had lost some of the connection of where he was vis-a-vis his relationship with God. So he's disconnecting from his community. He's not connecting with God the way that he should and be really mindful of. And so he's failing on both sides, and what he's coming up with is his ego as a leader. You ungrateful bastards! Here, you want this? I'll throw it in your face. What do you mean? And this is coming from me. The water is coming. So he had lost his footage.
Okay, so thank you, Genya, if Moses as the leader seems to be disconnected with God and disconnected with the people, maybe he shouldn't be the one to bring them into the land of Israel. Maybe he no longer has those skills.
I always thought that the problem was that God told Moses to strike the rock, and Moses struck the rock twice, and that was the conflict.
This time he didn't. He said, speak to the rock, not strike it. And Moses struck it twice. The last time they wanted water, he said, strike the rock. This time wasn't a striking. And Moses did strike it. Twice. Wow. Look at us.
Didn't we need a transition of Moses not being able to go into the land of Israel, and this was the beginning of that transition?
Did we need, I don't know, did we need a leadership transition? Was that, Genya says, according to Moses' actions, it looks like we're going to need a transition of leader, but I don't know, God does all kinds of things. Maybe Moses would be the right guy.
So in verse 10, Moses seems to be really angry. And he says, listen, you rebels. I mean, that's how it's translated in the cloud.
Right.
Okay, you ingrates, you people who aren't trusting. And then he goes and says, shall we get the water from the rock for you, not shall God get the water?
The rabbis are going to talk about all those things, yes. So shall we, we're going to look at it. So we have a couple of rabbis who are going to talk about that. So we have a number of things. We have this disconnect, calling the people rebels, not understanding where they are, falling on their faces. Shall we get water from the rock? Who's we? Who's we? Was that the sign of a disconnection from God? Let's see what we have here. So who's ever next reading? Who's reading? Okay, Stuart, you're reading at the top of page 2, the Ibn Ezra, at the top of page 2. We're going to read the Ibn Ezra, and then I'm going to explain the next few parts. It's a lot of words, so Stuart, go slowly, and folks, pay attention.
I will reveal in hints the explanation which appears correct to me. Know when the part knows the all, he cleaves to the all and creates signs and wonders with the help of the all. Now it is true that God told Moses and Aaron, speak ye unto the rock. They did not speak to the rock, because the people were quarreling with Moses. The part thus remained apart. He struck the rock, and the water did not come out of it until he struck it a second time. Moses and Aaron thus did not sanctify God's name. They inadvertently rebelled and trespassed. It is also possible to explain that, and he spoke rashly with his lips, refers to Moses. It was unseemly for Moses to say anything before fulfilling God's command. Moses was therefore punished. The Midrashic interpretation of our ancients of blessed memory, who said that Moses sinned because he said, "Hear now, ye rebels," is also in keeping with this interpretation. The rabbis hint at this secret.
All right, what is he saying? What's the answer? Is it Genya? It's what Genya said, the part was not cleaving to the all. Moses and Aaron as the part wasn't cleaving to the all, God, and separated from them and spoke with words and didn't follow God's command. Is that the secret? Which part of that is the secret? Ideas? Any? What is he saying? What is Ibn Ezra saying? What did Moses do? So we know he didn't sanctify God's name, but we're trying to figure out how he didn't sanctify God's name. What did he do that showed he didn't sanctify God's name?
Struck the rock twice.
He struck the rock twice. Hang on, there's some other.
Moses acted in anger. He didn't think. He didn't understand or realize that God is speaking to him specifically as God has spoken to him throughout the years. He acted out of anger and frustration, and that's where he sinned.
So we have anger, we have frustration, we have separation, we have, what else?
He acted independently.
Independently, the separation. We'll call that independently, the separation, the anger, the frustration. There may be a little ego. Shall we bring forth? All of those things, right? And Ibn Ezra says, did all of those things, maybe, and this idea of hear now, ye rebels, also being angry, that's a part of it too. All right, so there's a lot in there. So I want to look at this next we have plenty of time. Next 4 sections. I'm going slowly, Sherry. All right, look in the middle of page 2. In this section, Nachmanides reviews many of the commentators' answers to the questions, what was Moses' sin? I am sharing some of them below. Okay, so we've discussed anger, separation, not listening to God. He was independent. He yelled at the people. He struck the rock. He didn't follow instructions. He did an independent move. He was angry. He was frustrated. All of these answers. Now, Ramban understands that all of these sages, right? I'm going to have here Rashi. I'm going to have Rambam. And then I'm going to have Rabbeinu Hananel's answer. Ramban, Nachmanides, is now reviewing the answers of these other sages, of these other commentators. And then we're going to see where we go with all of these guys. So we know, okay, so these are the answers. And I have the first one, Rashi's answer to the question, what was Moses' sin? Sherry, you are reading. Everybody read slowly and carefully.
The sin of Moses and Aaron in the matter of the waters of Meribah is not clearly expressed in Scripture. Rashi explains that their sin consisted of hitting the rock because he had commanded them, and speak ye unto the rock, and did not say, and ye shall strike it. For had they had spoken to the rock, and it had brought forth water, the Holy One, blessed be he, would have been sanctified before the whole congregation, since the people would have said, even if even this rock which does not hear and does not speak, nonetheless obeys
the command of the Holy One, blessed be he, how much more should we obey his commands? These words are in the nature of a homiletic interpretation, but they do not clarify the matter. For since God had commanded Moses, take the rock, it implied that he should smite the rock for it. For had he only wanted that he should speak to it, what was the point of this rod in his hand? No, same thing with the lifting up the staff for the display in the water. You know, he lifted the staff up and the water split, so.
So Sherry's saying that was his thing. Moses always had that rod with him. It was like, okay. Eileen's first.
Not to second guess God, but if God was so upset, why didn't he just withhold the water coming from the rock? Because maybe they would have killed Moses and Aaron and the whole people would have been finished. And I mean, why did he put water from the rock if it was done so incorrectly and he was upset with it?
Interesting. Maybe it's the transition piece. Maybe. So why did God let the water flow if Moses did it the wrong way?
You know, I think there's something to be said for image. When we see Moses standing with his rod, we see God, or it evokes the feeling of God.
It evokes that God is behind this guy.
Correct. And I think that that's the issue, that once Moses uses the rod to strike the rock, the image of God disappears, and it focuses on Moses and his power. It also allows out allows out his frustration to come out, his anger to come out. There's something about the act of striking that's violent and is not godlike. And I think the image of Moses standing with his rod is very godlike.
So if Moses stood with the rod and said, rock, bring forth water for these people, that's one image. Right? God told him to do that. The other image is, you damn lousy, boom, boom. There's your water now. That's a different image. Stuart and the rabbis are saying the first image sanctifies God's name. The second doesn't. But they're still questioning. They're not really sure. They're not all sure. Rashi thinks that's it, maybe, but they're not 100% sure. Is there something else going on? Yes.
Can I say one other little thing
Sure.
that's been bothering me?
Don't let anything bother you here in the chapel.
And that is, and I know this is against all these comments in favor of Miriam, and I am in favor of Miriam.
That's an excellent way to start.
However,
You mean
in my usual self, I think that the association of Miriam and her sense of power, in a way, over water, that vision of the people, and that association between the people and Miriam was not a healthy one, and did not in many ways incorporate God, and did not make Miriam powerful because God made her powerful. I think it was almost like worshiping some
So there is too
idol.
much. So remember, the Torah doesn't say the people are mourning Miriam. They don't say they've upheld Miriam. Later, the commentators all wrote, gee, Miriam died, there's no water. Miriam is the one that watched Moses in the water. There must be a connection. So the commentators are making this connection. We have then said, that makes sense. We've elevated that connection with, water from the well. We're going to sing that in our service. And Miriam's cup, right? So we have seen, that makes sense to us. And that has been raised up. But the Torah hasn't raised it up necessarily, but the rabbis have. So Stuart's saying, maybe they overdid the Miriam connection. Maybe we're putting too much on it. And I think the commentators don't agree with you, but it's interesting. And let's see what your wife says. Let's see the commentators and your wife. Let's see who agrees with you.
So the women's commentator.
Yes. Women's
says,
commentary, right? That's where I started.
Right.
that Moses focused on institutional religion, but in our midrashic rendering of the story, Miriam's gift was to raise up the personal practices of the Israelites and to help the women of Israel recognize and claim their homes as a sacred place. So I think that.
So we think we like Miriam.
Right, but I think Miriam represents a whole thing, not the power structure and the.
Oh, so
But she
contrary to what her husband Stuart says,
Yes, as usual.
as usual, Miriam's not representing a kind of power structure. She's representing community and relationship.
Right, and the place of the woman in the community and having the home be a sacred place and a loving place. That
And
kind of
making,
thing.
thank you. Okay, that's a different way. That's why we're here. That's why we are unraveling the layers of Torah. That's why we're reading Pshat, the meaning, the remez, the hint, the sod, the secret, and the drash, our meaning.
On second thought, I think God should have said, on second thought, spare the rod.
Spare the rod. Wow, and not bring it at all.
Just to clarify.
Yeah, just to be sure. So if God were a little bit clearer, or if Moses, who was so upset, thought clearer and was calmer, maybe he would have heard God differently. Yeah, maybe.
Slight change of pace.
Like up to the microphone to your mouth.
It seems to me that Moses here is an older man. He is frustrated. He's tired. These people, he's been putting up with their complaints for 40 years. And all of a sudden he is showing his own weakness. Up until now, he has been the strength of the Jewish people. And perhaps at this point, he is not ready. He's no longer able to be the leader. And he's revealing to the people and to God that he's really not ready to take the people into the promised land. That he's just tired, he's fed up with them all, and he's grumpy. He's more than grumpy.
Grumpy.
Yeah.
He's grumpy. There's no prophet that arose again. Moshe, Ben Amram, the son of Amram. There's no prophet that was like Moses. But this morning in Parshat Chukat, we have claimed him grumpy. Okay. Okay. That's what the rabbis, that's what we're all saying. This morning he is grumpy, and maybe he's had enough, so maybe this is all a transition. Let's look at Rambam, Maimonides' answer. So, right, Ibn Ezra is reviewing the answer of Rambam. No, Ramban, sorry, Nachmanides is reviewing Maimonides. Who's Rip? Scott.
Now, Rabbeinu Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon advanced the following reasoning and explained that the sin of Moses, our teacher of blessed memory, consisted of tending towards anger when he said, "Hear now, ye rebels," and God, blessed be he, treated this as a failing, that a man like him should show anger in front of the congregation of Israel, in a situation in which anger was not warranted. All similar actions of such a man are treated as profanation of God's name, because the people take an example from all of Moses' movements and words, hoping thereby to achieve successes in this world and the world to come. How could he permit himself to appear angry, since anger is an evil trait and is derived only from a bad characteristic of the features of the soul?
Okay. So, do we remember, what's one of Maimonides' main principles for human beings? What does Maimonides say? What does Rambam say of how we are supposed to live? What will keep us on the right path? What's his word? He doesn't say that, but that's nice. Diane said, be good to each other. He says the middle way is the right way, the path of moderation. His shtick, one of it is being able to refine, right? What does religion do? We are refining and elevating our souls and our behavior. That's the middle path. Anger is not the middle. Anger is an extreme. So, Kenya, and we have one more.
He's not criticizing the anger itself, but that he showed it in front of the community.
That's another
and
issue.
And as a leader, whatever feelings you're having, you deal with them. But in front of the community that you are leading, you have to take the higher road, and you have to show you are a role model, and you have to show how things are done in the right, blessed way.
So anger is a response. Maimonides doesn't, there's a whole other huge section about when it's okay to show anger. I don't have it here, but or when it is okay to be angry, and the rabbis give a million reasons of when it's okay to be angry, and showing it when you're not supposed to, problem, ding, ding, ding. Miller, do you have something you would like to add? The microphone is sitting on your...
Next reading.
Okay, well, we're ready. We are ready for the next reading. Whose turn is it?
Miller's.
Oh, Miller's. Okay, go. Yeah.
The most likely explanation amongst all those that have been said about this matter, and the one best suited to answer a questionnaire, is that of Rabbeinu Hananel, who wrote in his commentary that the sin consisted of their saying, "Are we to bring you forth water out of this rock?" They should not have said, "Are we," but "Shall the Eternal bring you forth the water?" Just as they had said, "When the Eternal shall give you in the evening flesh to eat," etc. And similarly, in the case of all the miracles, they, Moses and Aaron, informed them that the Eternal would do wonders for them. And since they did not say so here, perhaps the people thought that Moses and Aaron brought forth the water for them out of the rock through their own wisdom, and that it was not a divine miracle. This is what God referred to in saying, "Ye sanctified me not." Now, in the case of the first episode of the rock, he said, "Behold, I will stand before thee there upon the rock in Horeb." And the 70 elders saw the pillar of the cloud hovering over the rock. And thus it was made apparent to all that the miracle was the deed of the great God. But here, since the people saw nothing, they misunderstood the words of Moses and Aaron, as explained above. And according to the Rabbeinu Hananel explanation, the criticism that
Lo ha'emantem be. You believe me not.
refers not to Moses and Aaron themselves, lacking in belief, but to the children of Israel. It does not mean, as is generally translated, "Ye believe not in me," but "Ye did not cause the children of Israel to believe in me, because you did not attribute to me the bringing forth of the water from the rock." Or the word
Lo ha'emantem.
may mean strengthening, as if to say, "Ye did not strengthen yourselves to sanctify me in their eyes."
You messed up, and the people now don't believe in me. That's how you didn't sanctify me. You didn't sanctify me because you didn't. You caused the people of Israel to not understand that this is God's miracle. You caused them not to believe. That is what Ramban's saying is the answer to the sin. You caused them not to believe. Still, I don't know if that's that. Eileen, and then
Indicated by what?
what? Indicated by what? So Hananel says you caused the people not to believe, but we don't see anything after this, right? After this, Moses sends messengers to the king. Eileen's saying in the text, following this event, we don't see where it says the people do not believe. We do not see that here. Okay?
Because they did say the Eternal brought us, that the Eternal brought us here. Why did you and the Eternal bring us here? So they believed. It's just that belief did not translate into, such a belief that he would save them, that he would do something for them. So, no, I think they believed.
They believed, but they
Moses
didn't
just
think.
faulted as a leader at that point.
Moses faulted as a leader, and they may not have believed that they would be saved. Okay, Ed.
Yes. There at the very end, there is a comment that the site is called Me Merivah, the waters of quarreling.
Strife,
So
right.
that is sort of an oblique reference to everything that had come before, and that in fact the people at that moment were exhibiting a lack of faith. Whether they ultimately had faith or not is another question. But
Right, so the section ends. This is called the Waters of Strife. That's the name of the place. Waters of Strife. Okay? Let's read the last one, and let's see what that says.
all right. Through which he affirmed his sanctity. The Holy One was sanctified because Moses and Aaron died, since the evildoers would see that the Holy One does law and justice with the righteous and pious. How much more so with the evildoers? Based
Okay.
on the Rashi.
Based on the Rashi. So, verse 2013. Let's read verse 2013 again. 2013. Those are the waters of Meribah, waters of strife, meaning that the Israelites quarreled with the Lord, through which he affirmed his sanctity. The waters of Meribah, at this place, God affirmed God's sanctity. Rashi, through Te'ena Urena, is saying God sanctified this place by announcing the death of Moses and Aaron. That this is the kind of justice. Now, I don't know, do people think they were going to live forever? I don't know. But that was where, that's at the end. That's what God says, okay, so this is going to sanctify me. He probably didn't, he didn't sanctify me for all those reasons maybe, but now, God is going to all people righteous and pious as Moses and Aaron were, as much, and there's a little hint there for how we are supposed to behave. If these guys, the most righteous, the most pious, the best, are still have to deal with God's justice, then all of us and those who are bad think about them. So that is that idea. So now, go right back to the beginning. See what we have said against what has already been said about it, and let the truth have its way. That's what Maimonides says about this. Let the truth have its way. So, did we find the truth? Did we find lots of truths? That's how the rabbis feel about this section. There are so many different ideas and so many nuances about their behavior. What would Moses have done? Are they grieving? Is it anger and frustration? Did he cause the people to move further from God? Was Moses too far away from God and the people? All of these reasons are in this section from the commentators. And Maimonides says, yes, in here somewhere in here is the truth. And was it all to understand? Is it for us to understand that at some time there's a change in leadership? When the leader is not able when the leader, even maybe if it's just a short time, when the leader shows qualities that separate him, or when the leader shows qualities which is not for Torah, following God, is this a sign of change of leadership? So all of that is a part of this portion. And I encourage you to read, the rest of it as well. And of course, happy birthday, Alex Aklepi. Today's Alex's birthday. I added that into our Torah study, honey. Thank you, everybody. Have a Shabbat Shalom. The answer may be D, all of the above.
10 years ago, not 12, and it's on Hulu. Okay.
check, check, check. This.